Did everyone consent to having their picture taken?
Oh, we haven't asked yet.
Yeah.
So, hello everyone. Welcome to our first NAfME clinic of the semester. We'll introduce ourselves in a second, but real quick, do we have everyone's permission to have their photo taken? Or, all right, cool. So, here, Avery, would you like to introduce the clinic?
All right. So I thought we'd put together a read care clinic. Detailing more specifics about double reads, especially since we kind of briefly covered them in the methods courses. We'll talk about a little bit of like how to identify if a read's working or not, how to basically kind of do a quick fix on it, and a couple other things. So first off, we have oval reads. Did you want to talk a little bit about oval reads?
Yeah, so first of all, this is the anatomy of oval read. Try to get scared by all the measurements as an anatomy just to show how it looks like. But this is the anatomy of it. We start with the tip up here. It is the thinnest part of the oval read and the CSUN read as well. Here we got the back, the rails, the spine, and the most important part, the heart, which is the thickest part of it. And when you get a new read, you're like, woo, new read, but does it work? Well, first things first, you soak it in warm or room temperature water for 1 to 2 minutes. Never cold water. If it gets cold, it gets shriveled up and it doesn't really work. But never also scorching hot water, either not boiling. You don't want that either. So 1 to 2 minutes, and try not to go past that. Yeah, never over soak, so even you. Extra soaking is not going to do anything. It's probably going to make it worse. And to break in the read, technically speaking, the read is already broken into because the process of making the read, the person has to kind of play it, so it's technically already broken in. However, you don't know how long ago it was made, and also at what altitude, what temperature, where, when, why. So this is like a good method of breaking it in. Simple steps. Oh, this is assuming you're a teacher and you're telling this to a kid. Like, oh, just play for 15 minutes, you know, basic things. And then you learn to decide, let it dry, 10 minutes, put it back if they need to. And later on, they can play for a rehearsal or maybe a longer practice, and they just repeat it for 2 or 3 days and should be working properly. And in this slide, I linked that case in there, which is just one of these. And you kind of want your students to be using a case because they will end up putting it back where they came from, which is not good because there's bacteria breeding ground, pretty gross, and also, especially these ones are prone to hitting the tip. They're like, oh, let me put it back in. I even cringed, and it's a dead read now. Yeah, it felt weird.
Same thing applies to the CSUN reads. They come in the little, like Jones sends them in those little cases, and they just trap moisture and they break. And
This is what the CSUN one looks like. It's basically the same brand as that one. They fit 3. This one also fits 3. And they're probably gonna use 3 out of 10.
You can also go like try hard mode and get it.
Well,
Okay, Jabe.
Okay, Jabe.
But like most of these don't work anyways.
Jabe,
Alright, next slide.
So now, does the read work? That's the most important. And there's 3 components to a functional read, which is response, pitch, and they combine together for width stability. Next slide. So response is whether or not it can resonate or buzz when blown into it, because like when a conductor does a downbeat, you don't want ha, you want ha, you know how the duck sound of the oboe would do it. You don't want it delayed, at least you want it on time. Rhythm is most important. So there's a variety of reasons of why if it's not playing instantly. And these are not the only reasons, there could be other reasons. These are just like the main reasons I thought right away. Maybe the tip is too thick, which is the most common. And what you would do with that on this side is that you just make the tip thinner, which is right here. So this is assuming you know a little bit of read basics, but Mannie will talk about that later. Basically, you're like, oh, here's the tip, and let me make it thinner from here. and the knife goes here. The other reason maybe the tip is too worn out, or maybe it's been bumped into a couple times. If that's the case, it's probably a dead reed. There's a slight chance you can save it by cutting the very tip of it, which is on number 2 there. If the reed tends to be flat, if it is a little bit flat, you could cut the tip a little bit and maybe it has a little bit of life, but you probably have to toss it. Third reason, tip's too closed, especially with dry reeds. You can kind of see it. You can pass this around. It's a little bit on the close side rather than open. It is because it's dry. When they're closed, they're not going to form well, so maybe it just needs water. Or you can use your fingers to temporarily, I think Mannie can talk about later, open it up a little bit, but it's only temporary. And the fourth reason is the side, so here and here is a bit too thick, and if this is too thick, then when the air passes through here, it's going to get interrupted through here and it won't be able to go back here and resonate back and forth. It won't be able to, like your throat. And the solution to that is just make it thinner, but never here. That's also what you would tell your student if they know how to edit their reed a little bit. But it's also assuming that your student is taking lessons, because if you have a middle schooler who's playing oboe or bassoon, they need to be taking lessons. If they don't, they're probably going to fail. I even had a child prodigy, a 6th grader, played piano really well, drum set really well, any instrument he touched did really well. He got an oboe. Let's say by the end of the year, he stopped playing oboe. Because the teacher was like, you know what, I don't think you need a private teacher. He needed one. Next one. The second thing was pitch. Check the pitch. And to do that, you would crow with the reed. I'm not sure if it's going to work. And you would crow with the reed by putting your lips where the thread would be. And in theory, if I blow into this, it should sound a C. Hopefully Jordan can hear it. Or maybe this doesn't work at all and you won't have to. It's a pretty bad reed probably. Maybe because I bumped it in. And so the tuner should read C sharp. And Jordan said it didn't, I'm gonna believe her. And because embouchure-wise, all the notes on the oboe, if this reed can play C sharp or C to C sharp on this reed if it can play those 2 notes, you can play all of the oboe, the range of the oboe, just fine. Potential solution, if it doesn't crow C, is that maybe it's too flat or sharp, I forgot, you know.
If it's flat, then you cut too much off the reed. If it's sharp, then there's still too much wood.
Yeah, there you go. So it's too sharp, and you can cut the tip a little bit more and it'll open up more, and maybe it'll crow C. If it doesn't, it's probably set up for failure. And with those 2 things, the last thing together, is that a question?
Yeah, what happens if you cut off too much?
It gets flat.
If it's there's a certain length that the reed has to be. It has to be 70 millimeters to 73-ish. If it's in that range and it plays flat, then you cut 2 off. But if you chop it lower than that, then it's going to play sharp.
What do you do if you cut too much off?
If you cut too much off, then either you start over or you can try shaving more off to make it sound more flat with less wood. But most likely you're going to have to redo it.
In conclusion, it's probably cooked.
Oh,
A
yeah.
lot of times if you overdo anything, just throw it out.
Yeah.
It's like putting too much salt on the food.
Yeah, it's like, so is the pitch of the crow not at all dependent on, if they're just learning it and they don't have, the right embouchure, or is it completely dependent on the length of the?
You technically don't need an embouchure for playing here, because you're just playing your lips here and blowing.
Oh.
Yeah. You're getting the overtones of the reed when you grow. But the length is just the pitch. I have 2 reeds, the length. One is significantly shorter. But this one plays flat and this one plays sharp. This one's flat because I cut too much off. The tip is very exposed, so the tip is a lot bigger than it should be. Because it shouldn't be too big, it should be a couple millimeters, but If you just buy them at the store, that'd be fine. That's it.
Yeah. So yeah. Can the read play in all registers? That's also the important part. So you need the response, you need the pitch, but is it good in the low octave, the middle octave, the upper octave? You can't get a read that's like meant just for low, because it's unreliable. You need it to play multitudes of range. But some reads are advertised, like I know in RDG they advertise a green one called the Kiwi read. They're like, this is good for low. It is good for low, but it's okay in the other ranges, so it's like, whatever. If you know you're gonna play really low repertoire, then I guess, but if for a student like middle school, high school, get them a read like it's all good ranges, not just lower range.
Alright, so in terms of read care, once you have a read that works, you want to maintain it to the best of like your and your students' ability. Oboe reads, and I assume also the student reads, have a reputation for being really fragile just because they are like so thin and delicate, and also because a lot of students and then middle and high school band directors just aren't double reed players and don't know how to adjust reeds to expand their lifespan. So it's like, oh, the reed's just getting a little bit worn down and the student can't play on it anymore. Not to the student's fault, it's just the reed needs to be open, but they don't know how to do that, and it just kind of causes a lot of frustration. So here's just some advice on how to maintain reeds a little bit and prevent them from like breaking down or like getting rotten, and then we'll talk also a little bit about basic reed adjustments later. But so, as stated, reeds are extremely fragile, as Lionel demonstrated. They are like prone to chips and breaks. It is like if you are holding a reed and drop it on the floor, there's a good chance it will crack. If you bump it against something, it might chip. So if you have a student oboist, you want to tell them like, be extremely careful, like with this reed, do not break it. Like tell them like, this is how much it costs, and if you like blow like on it wrong, like it will just fall apart. Like make sure they understand this is something very expensive and very fragile, so take care of it. You want to use clean water that's not cold to soak the reeds, as Lionel shared cold water, because reeds are made of organic material. It'll just like change the reed slightly. Reeds will also change a little bit with the weather. If it's too dry, your reeds won't play well. If it's like gets cold, your reeds like change their tuning. Reeds are really weird. But you want to use clean water always, and replace the water every time you use it, because again, as stated, reeds are made of organic material. If you use like reused water or dirty water, like things will get in your reed and they will start to mold. Also, reeds can mold on the inside, especially double reeds, and it's really gross. So be careful of that. When you are putting a reed in or taking it out of your oboe, you want to try to grab it by the cork instead of the thread, just because the thread is tied around the bottom of the cane when you make a reed. And so if you grab it by the thread, you might end up accidentally twisting the cane and cause it to crack from the bottom. So yeah, as you can see, when you put a reed into the oboe, some of the cork still stays out. So you want to hold it by the cork to take it out, and then hold it by the cork and twist it into the oboe when you're putting it in. You want to remove excess moisture and allow the reed to dry before putting it in the case. Really good cases, I think, will also have ventilation within them. But it's again going back to the fact reeds are organic material. So if you put them into just a completely enclosed space while they're still wet, they will start to mold, and then all the other reeds in there will also start to get moldy, and that's not good. So to soak any reed, use a small cup that's deep enough. I use an old just like prescription pill bottle. I know a lot of people will also use shot glasses. They're about the right size, but yeah. You can buy cups that are made specifically to soak reeds, but it's not 100% needed. And yeah, you dip the reed all the way to the start of the thread. You want to try to avoid soaking the thread. It's not the end of the world if it gets wet, but you want to try and keep like just the cane is what's getting soaked. And then don't soak the reed with just your mouth for two reasons. One, because double reeds, unlike single reeds, there's the two panels and you have to soak both sides of both panels. So if you just hold it in your mouth, you're not gonna sufficiently soak the two panels that are like, if this is panel 1, this is panel 2, the outsides will get soaked, but the insides won't, and the reed won't vibrate and respond correctly. And then they'll also just promote bacterial growth, again, inside of the reed, which you don't want. And then also play with a clean mouth. When you're like blowing into a double reed, you can get things stuck inside of the reed, and that will also promote bacterial growth, and both make the reed die and potentially make you sick. So, yeah, and then, so how long do they last? So, in general, if you have one reed and you just play that every day, it'll last on average about a month. So it's better to have like multiple reeds at a time that work, and you can just like rotate them through like day to day. So that way, then all of your reeds will just kind of end up lasting a little longer because you're not wearing them out every single day. You're just like giving them some time between. Whenever you have to toss a reed, keep the staple. Especially if like your students seem like they're really into oboe, they might continue with it. Staples are always reusable. You can harvest a staple from a dead reed by just either cutting the twine off or the thread off of the reed and then removing it, or you can just snap the cane off and then kind of pull everything out. And then you can save the staples and use them when you start reed making. If your reed ends up cracked or like significantly chipped, just throw it away. It's not going to work anymore. If just the end is peeling off, it's kind of a judgment call. It should be okay. I've had reeds that like do that and they're fine. I've had other ones that you can kind of like hear it, like you can hear the like side bit vibrating, and it's just like, okay, this reed's not very good.
Just don't peel it like cheese, because from the tip, it kind of doesn't matter if there's a little hole because your mouth is covering it anyway. But if you peel it downward, then it makes a hole here, and then it doesn't work anymore because now the air is just leaking out.
All right.
Reed tools. So when you make adjustments, you need to get all these knives and all that. But the most common stuff is just your normal reed making knife and a mandrel, which are just, they're like common for reed making. So this is a mandrel. You put the staple on top and then you just get your reed knife, just shave a little bit off. They're very sharp, so caution. You need a lot of caution when you're working with knives. I can take that. So, yeah, your mandrel, you just stick it through the bottom of the little staple, and you can put the reed on, tie it, make a reed. But when you make your reeds, you need to make sure that they're a certain length, so that they don't come out too sharp too flat. So you need a little millimeter ruler, and you just want to make sure that they're below a certain length, like 72. But a lot of reeds already come like that, so you don't need to worry about making them yet. But a little adjustments is just a little shaving off the tips and things like that. Some other things are like a razor blade you can use to cut thread, a stone to sharpen the knives if they get dull, which they don't tend to get dull too much. Like maybe sharpen them like once a month or once a week is like preferred. For the thread, you need to make sure you get nylon thread because it's the only thread strong enough to hold the reed. If you use cotton or anything else, it's just gonna snap. And the beeswax to make sure the thread is nice and lubricated when we first start tying it, or else the reeds will shift out of where you're making it from. And an example.
This is just my reed making kit. So if you have a student that is like probably like late high school taking lessons and starting reed making, this is most likely what they're going to get. They start out with the essentials and then just kind of build, but the important things are, I recommend starting with a B10 knife. It's kind of the easiest to work with. And then their ruler, you have to be able to clearly see millimeters on it because that's how reeds are measured. And then you need a container to soak reed cane. It has to be enough to completely submerge the reed cane, so there's a good chance that you'll need to get a different container than what you're like soaking your reeds in.
Like a mug would do just fine, or like a bowl.
This is shaped, gouged, and folded cane, if you guys want to see it. That's how you would make the reed. You'd get each one of those. And just fold it on top of the stable and go from there, go ham.
So this is like the container I use for soaking reeds for ensemble playing, and then this is the container I use for soaking cane for reed making. So.
First one?
Yeah.
We have a little resource page, we're able to give them access to this.
Yeah.
Okay, so, at the end of this, we can figure out how to give you guys access to this. We went ahead, there's like the student slide too, where there's some stuff linked. So, you know, you can check out some links of like where to get these tools and reads and stuff. And then we have a read adjustment guide for over right there as well. And then now we're on the bassoon section. Right here, we similarly to the oboe, we have the anatomy of the bassoon reed. You can see the tip up there, the channels, the spine. There's the first wire and the second wire, as well as the third wire that's under the threading, and then the butt. Do you want to do anything to add?
Yeah, well, if you have like a young student or an old student that doesn't care, like 90% of this is like in one ear out the other. The only part you really need to know that makes it different from the oboe is you got the wires, which there might be a slide, but you can use those to adjust the reed. And then there's the tip and the spine, which you don't want to touch if you're scraping it. But most of that is technical information that you don't actually need to know if you're just going to be adjusting ones that you buy.
Okay, so similarly to oboe reeds, bassoon reeds are also fragile. Same thing, you want to soak them in clean water, not in your mouth, because again, like Wylan was saying, the reed won't be adequately soaked. And if it's not adequately soaked, then both of the, both sides of the reed aren't going to vibrate properly.
Can I answer?
Yes, please do.
Just make sure that you communicate well, because I had one student who, it could have been my fault, it could have been a variety of factors, but the student thought they actually had to store the reed in the water when it wasn't being used, like a specimen in a lab, which it didn't go well, and
I had a student, same thing.
Yeah.
One of these bad boys was like, what if I just put water in here and just...
that doesn't give the reed infinite life. I wish it did.
I know.
But make sure it's really clear that they don't do that.
For reed adjusting, actually at Kazimic, I went to this oboe clinic where the lady was talking about oboe reeds. Tori was there too. And the lady was actually talking about how for younger students, at least for oboe reeds, I don't know if you guys can back me up on this, but sandpaper, because you don't necessarily want to give like a 14-year-old a knife that's a liability. But if you have like a private student, obviously that's with your own judgment. We'll show you a picture of some of the bassoon reed adjusting tools. Again, there's also kits that sell certain ones, so like we have over there, you can see like there's the mandrel, the plaque, the reamer, pliers. Personally, I think if you're trying to do quick fixing, like in class or something, right? If you have a student who's trying to fix something real quick, probably pliers and the reamer, and then would you say mandrel are probably the best. The reamer gets excess cane out from the inside of the reed that attaches onto the vocal. And if there's too much cane left over in there, when the reed tries to attach to the vocals, sometimes it'll kind of move. I've personally had it like fall off while I'm playing if I haven't reamed it out enough.
It's like a
Yeah, sorry.
corkscrew kind of thing.
Okay, we'll go there.
It's making the hole to be larger so that it can fit on better. And
And
Yeah.
the vocalist level.
sometimes you get a brand new one and it doesn't really fit on the vocal so well. Yeah, it just makes the whole bigger.
Yeah, I think,
She's got.
oh sorry,
I have a
good.
Sorry. What is that like material? Because it's not like the string. What
No,
is
so-
that?
Mine that I buy, yeah, rather than using string, it's just hot glue.
Mhm.
Some people use hot glue, extreme, or thread. I don't know if there's another option than that, but,
Okay. And that just works.
yeah, it's just the same thing. Some people think it's better.
Some people
I don't
think
really
it's,
care.
quicker maybe.
It's faster to do,
Cuter.
but
Yeah, you can, I mean,
they do colors.
Okay, cool.
the student tutor we had like a couple years ago would like,
He was big on
he was big on the glue and he would put like sparkles in it. You could look all pretty. Anyways, do you have pliers on you too? Okay, can we possibly go back to the read? Yeah, the read now. Okay, so also one of the quick fixes with pliers is to adjust the first and the second wire. Let's see.
it's the number one adjustment you'll ever do on the series is
So
it's
one-
the wires.
One way opens it and one way would close it, but there's.
I don't know if anybody will be able to see, but
Whoa.
well, I don't really care if this reed gets destroyed, but if you go this way, the hole gets bigger. If you go this way, the hole gets smaller. I just crushed this
Yeah, and
reed.
it's very,
This reed didn't work in the first place.
yeah, it's very hard to break a reed doing that.
Also-
When I first started out, I was like really scared I was gonna break it, but you can actually put a lot of force and it'll open pretty well.
Also, I don't know if you were taught this, but I was always taught to kind of soak it before I like.
You should
Because
soak
you
it
don't want it
before
to
you
crack.
adjust the wires because it can crack, and that one's completely dry, so probably contributed to that. But
So the way I was taught was like if you want to open it like Mathew, I don't know if you can see, but if you want to open it the way Mathew said like this, I was taught to go on the bottom wire, go the opposite.
so yeah, the opposite.
Yeah.
If you do the bottom wire, it's the opposite adjustment, but that's also a slightly different adjustment. I honestly I wouldn't recommend for an intermediate student to even bother with the second wire. Really, the only adjustment you really need to make is adjusting the first wire on the opening, and then whatever your private teacher tells you to do. Because honestly, an intermediate high school student, when I was in high school, I had no idea what I was doing, and neither did the rest of them probably, to be honest. It's really hard to judge sometimes, especially as a beginning student. I mean, in high school, I wasn't that good of a student there, so who am I to know what to do with my reeds? All these stuff with knives and all this, it's like, yeah, I would have just been wrecking my reeds in high school if I had all this stuff. If I had to recommend for band directors or teachers or anything to get a student player, pliers and a water cut, honestly.
And would you say ringer too?
Yeah, you can get a reamer if you want. I mean, you want a reamer? Whatever.
I mean it's yeah. Also we put up like some good, resources to get reads. If you have, this is my personal experience with it, but I started on Jones. I started on medium soft and then moved up, I think, medium, I guess. After that, I kind of just moved on to RDG, and then when I got to college, I played on the reads that our teacher was making us. And then into college, I've just been buying them from a certain reed maker. But for beginning players, I'd say probably Jones or any sort of beginning reed, and then when they get more into it, pretty quickly switch. What did you start on?
On what reeds?
Yeah.
Yeah, I started on the Jones, the little red ones, right?
Yeah, the little red ones.
You get the Jones, they're on Amazon, they're just mass produced. The reeds that are usually more expensive and better are the ones that are actually handmade. But these ones, I guess, just assembly line. And then eventually, you'll want to upgrade from the Jones, but I spent all of high school playing on them and they can sound pretty good. So don't underestimate the student reeds. And also, RDG Woodwinds, they're in Pasadena. They have a great location, and they also have materials for other woodwinds, etude books for clarinet and flute and stuff, and they have they help me get that really cool case. So it's a good place to check out. Forest, I don't know, yeah, it's on there. Forest is in the Berkeley area.
Do the RDG reads do you also still have to adjust those, or are they you just kind of
Yeah,
play
I mean, the reads that you like, it's very personal to you, what you respond to and what you like. So usually, unless it's a perfect read, and there are, every once in a while you get one that it's like, it just starts working. A lot of times you will have to do a little bit of a scrape, or a little bit of a ream or something, and it will be, I don't know if it was mentioned, but you actually don't need the pliers to pinch the wire, you can just do it with your fingers. It's not gonna last as long, but if you're in the middle of rehearsal and you've been playing for a few hours and it's starting to close up, you can actually.
That was my teeth before, it's like, not good for, not recommended.
Yeah, you can get crafty with it,
Yeah.
but yeah, most reads you will have to adjust some amount.
To further add to the question for oboe, they have the reed that we all desire as oboe players here. It's the pattern reed. For some reason, this maker just makes it really consistent really well. This is like $40, but this is a student one. This I passed around, right? It looks cheaper than this one, but it's like $14. And I've tried 3 of these, and they're all like pretty consistently like okay. They're not going to sound good. It's not going to sound like ducks, but at least it didn't really need much adjustment. Like maybe barely like some pitch adjustments, but if the regainer, who cares? Nobody tunes in the beginning band anyway.
Next slide. Here's some more pictures. I also wanted to add in there that the reamer is different than the mandrel. While they look alike, they serve different purposes. Like I said, the reamer takes out the extra cane, and then the mandrel kind of serves as like a stabilizing point. But my personal opinion, coming from like an educator, future educator standpoint, don't waste your money on tools that you're gonna probably use like twice a year. Get like what you need for your classroom and what would probably be most handy and cheapest. This one's like $22, that's like $5, and it would last you a long time. So it's you could argue it's an investment.
You can also go to the hardware store and get pliers. They don't have to be like mythical reed pliers.
I didn't even know that you can read me.
Yeah.
Yeah, like these are from Amazon.
Yeah. I think
Just recommend like needle nose type of pliers, something small.
Yeah.
I've had people where I borrowed their pliers and they're like huge distance.
Give some general information.
Yeah, so this is kind of like partially reads, partially just general, good to know as an educator for the instruments. In case of emergency, this isn't a long-term fix. If you have like a reed that is starting to leak air out of the sides and you just need it to last through like that rehearsal, you can get cigarette paper that is also good for getting water out of the keys. If you just like get it wet and then wrap it around the reed, that will seal it and it'll like hold it well enough. It won't fix the reed long-term. I wouldn't recommend really like playing on the reed much after it started like leaking out of the sides, but that's a good emergency fix. Also, just good to keep in mind that oboes are one of the most delicate, if not just the most delicate and fragile instruments on the planet. If you look at Lionel's oboe over there, there is just so much like tubing and wiring and springs and keys, and there's just so many things that can go wrong with an oboe, and it's so intricate. Student model oboes aren't as complex, but alongside the combination of reeds being like very fragile and maybe needing adjustments that the student isn't aware of, and the oboe just being a fragile instrument, there's going to be a lot of students who like have a hard time producing a sound, and it's completely not their fault. They're just working with like bad or damaged equipment. So that's why it's good if you can either learn as much about double reeds as you can, or be able to like bring someone in who's familiar with double reeds, who can like take a look at everything or be able to help your student. That's really helpful. And then the last one is, because again, there's so many keys and things on oboe, and most woodwinds deal with it, you'll get what's kind of we call water in the keys. It's like kind of like how brass players can just empty their spit valves. For us, there's not an easy way to do that.
Water.
Yeah, water key, my apologies. But this is a trick Lionel showed me last year, if you'd like to do it, to just kind of, as a preventative measure,
Why don't you?
yeah. So basically, it's pretty common in rehearsal when you're not playing to hold the oboe at an angle kind of like this or sit on your lap like this. You want to do it so the keys are facing up towards the ceiling, either this way or this way. The reason for that is the spit inside your oboe will then go down to this side where there's not keys, just gravity-wise, and then it just like prevents water from hitting your keys, because once it's in there, it's going to be stuck there for a while, and you're going to spend the rest of your rehearsal trying to just like clear it out, and it's just going to keep causing problems.
Can I comment on that? There's a very similar thing for bassoon. If you've seen, it goes in through the vocal and then comes down and then loops around at the bottom. And so, when you're suaving, it goes through, the bottom is called the boot joint, but then there's the long one that moisture never actually gets into because it doesn't go up. And so if you're resting the bassoon on your lap and it actually tilts upside down a little bit, that won't be good because the swab isn't going to capture the moisture that goes in there. So keeping it on your lap is fine, but most people, I think, will live vertically.
Also, I wanted to add, I know that we maybe have talked about this in woodwind methods a little bit, but it's really good to have a seat strap. I know that the bassoons that I've seen in woodwind methods typically don't have one, and I think you had to buy one this year, right? Yeah. Wylan had to buy one, and please don't have your kids using a neck strap. It's bad ergonomically, in my opinion. It's just, you're gonna have your kid end up playing like this, and then the weight, just tap the weight of the instrument, so with the seat strap, sorry, I don't have one with me right now, but when you're sitting and you're playing, right, and the seat strap's holding the bassoon, a lot of the weight is going into that. So if you're using a neck strap, the weight's not gonna be distributed. I don't know how to really explain it.
Yeah, like you're carrying the weight of the whole thing.
Instead of the seat strap.
Yeah.
And you're probably gonna end up, your students will end up feeling pain in places they probably shouldn't, like the wrist or their back or their neck or something. I'm, like you can see here, this is the same one I have. I think there's some cheaper ones you can find on like Amazon, RDG, any of those websites. It doesn't really matter. This one I've had for 7 years and I'm still using it. And I know we touched on briefly like methods of soaking the reeds. That's just an example, like Wylan was saying, you don't have to use like the reed specific cup. You can use like those little medicine containers. In a classroom, personally I wouldn't recommend like a shot glass. It's glass, your kids will probably end up dropping it inevitably. I've seen college bassoonists drop a shot glass and it broke, and then they didn't have anything to hold their reed in to soak in. So unless your kid is very, 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 very careful, I would just stay away from the shot glasses. Also, something cool about the soaker cup is that it has a little clip with it. So instead of leaning down in rehearsal, say your reed gets really dry, it's dry outside or whatever, it's affecting your reed. You don't have to lean all the way down to soak it, you can just clip right there on the stand. So that's something cool.
Alright, so we have a little under 20 minutes left, so if you guys have any questions about reeds or bassoons or oboes in general? Yeah.
It's kind of a gross question, but the water in the elbow keys reminded me when I played this in the woodwind methods. Is it, and this bassoon also just like really sucked, it was from the school, so is it normal for like water and spit to come out of like the,
Yes.
okay,
Come out of the keys sometimes and out of your
Yeah.
fingers, yeah.
okay.
It just,
Yeah, like if you see like a clarinet player holding the thing going, they're dealing with the same problem. It's very sad, especially when it's humid out. It happens a lot.
Also with bassoon, with the vocal, it kind of goes up, and sometimes if you've been playing for a while, the spit will get kind of trapped like in the vocal while you're playing, and it'll kind of sound like a, I don't know how to describe it, but it just sounds kind of like a like you can hear it. What I do is sometimes I take my reed off and I just kind of blow into it if I'm trying to just quickly do that in rehearsal. I don't know, what do you typically do?
When you're getting that sound,
Yeah, like
They just, like,
spit.
you just like suck in, and that kind of dislodges the.
Just kind of dislodges it.
It's gross, but
It's gross.
So
you get used to it.
there's a
All
difference
different
between
players have to
there's a
do that.
difference between spit and water that comes from condensation. Brass, it's literally spit, but spit doesn't travel through the reed very well. So if you tilt it upside down and liquid comes out, it's just condensation from your breath. It's not literally your spit. If that like gives you peace of mind. It's still clear disgusting.
Who's play testing them, right? Like if I'm not buying them from a manufacturer and like I'm making it or I have a read teacher making it, am I like sitting aside the student while they play, or am I trying their read out? Like, because I heard like you have to, like how do we know it's correct? Is the student, if they're a beginner and like they're playing on it and it doesn't sound right and I'm like, okay, like what's
Well,
the need?
if you have a student that has a private teacher, the teacher's gonna play on the read, make sure it plays.
On their read?
Yeah, on their read.
Yeah, we kind of.
Yeah.
That's read.
Whoever
Okay.
makes the read, yeah. Whoever makes the read,
That's
on
good.
their read.
And if you're buying,
Yeah.
if you're buying a professional or an intermediate read that's handmade, the person who made the read is already.
Okay,
Like it's.
good to know.
If you're worried about it, again, you can test like the crow, and if it's like crowing like fundamentally, it's at least like playable. It might still need like a little bit of adjustment, but like in theory, you should be able to play it. If it's not crowing, then without like actually knowing, like if you yourself don't know anything about oboe, but you can't get it to crow, then the reed is probably dead, and that's why your student's struggling with it.
What would you do if you have a student that's struggling with the read and you want to test it out to see if it's working, but they don't want you to
Yeah.
like put your mouth on? They're like, please do not put that in your mouth.
I guess you just kind of have
Just
to,
have to look at it.
yeah, look at it and explain to them like.
You can shine a light like on top of the reed to see like the outline of how the reed is like made. Like if you go back to like one of the slides that we had, like that's like how a reed would look when you're shining a light through it, and that's how it should look. So yeah, you shine a light through it, and it should look like that. The brightest is at the top, and then through the middle is like the darkest.
It should also be symmetrical on both sides, both like left and right and front and back read. So if it's not symmetrical in any way, that's another indicator that there's something wrong. But so you can look at the read, but I would also say just explain to the student, like obviously I'm not going to play your read if you're not comfortable with that, but you are going to kind of like hinder like this process, and I won't be able to fully test your read and see if there's anything you can adjust on it.
And I'm showing this all to all of you, the ones who have seen it. This is a student read, and it does not look like that because it's not really good. It's really thin, like you don't even see a heart at all. If you remember, it's that darkest thing in the middle. There's no heart. It's basically just blank.
Yeah, so if you shine a light through it, like when it's soaking away, if it's dark, then maybe you can take some off. You just have to look for a little triangle for some off. If they don't want you to come, that's how you can adjust it.
With brass mouthpieces and like you're sharing them, sometimes you use like scented rubbing alcohol to like clean it in between. Is that okay to do with reeds?
So I had people, like in COVID times and stuff, if they're selling reeds or passing reeds around, you soak them in isopropyl alcohol.
Yeah.
I've also soaked reeds in vodka. But
Don't
soaking
do
it in
that
some
on
kind of
campus.
an alcoholic solution with no sugar, it.
So
Yeah, the only
I would recommend
It's
isopropyl
okay.
alcohol, and it's important to soak it in water after because
Yeah.
it will taste bad.
that
Yeah,
it's not
even
like
close to that.
as quick as like with brass, like just like spray it on or like dunk it in, they'll wipe it off and you're good. Just
Yeah,
because reeds are absorbent,
You gotta
so
soak it and
yeah, you have
let
to
it
soak
soak
it.
in alcohol.
so you again, if you play double reed, you just kind of have to desensitize yourself to like how gross it is to share reeds.
I was a
Yeah.
germaphobe before I started playing oboe.
Yeah.
And then also Dr. Pissar was like, oh, let me see your read.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, this is my life now.
Yeah, but for kids that are like weird about germs, you can just spray.
Oh, yeah,
That's cool.
If you're
Yeah,
if you're a
it's not
teacher,
good.
Just like I would say tell them just like wait a while before they like play it, like spray or soak it in the like isopropyl alcohol, and tell them like wait and then soak it in water before you play it. Like don't just like stick rubbing alcohol in your mouth. That's not good.
as a teacher, I would try to have that as the last solution as possible if you actually playing it. Have that be like the last thing. Like if you think it's dead, try it and like, okay, it is dead, then
How do you tune on bassoon and oboe? Or how do you teach tuning, I guess?
So for oboe, you kind of can't. It's entirely embouchure. So for tuning on oboe, and like you guys can like correct me if I'm wrong, it's kind of you just have to build up your embouchure to be able to adjust each note on the fly, because you can't really do any adjustments like with like you don't have tuning slides like you have on brass. You can't like push the reed in more like you can with like mouthpieces or head joints on other woodwinds. So it's kind of just entirely, you do actually get a pretty wide range. Like if I'm playing an A on oboe, I can through just like embouchure bring it all the way down to an in tune A flat. So like if you like train your embouchure enough, you get a wide range and can do a lot of like big adjustments to keep the instrument in tune. But yeah, in terms of the actual instrument, there's like nothing.
And if it's like too hard to get in tune, then you need to take something.
Yeah.
It's the same idea for bassoon. There's no physical adjustment on the instrument you make.
No slides or anything.
But if the student or you already have woodwind experience, especially saxophone, because it's a looser embouchure, then you already kind of have an intuitive sense of what you need to change to make it sharper or flatter. It's the same. So.
There is one like solution that's dumb. That's you only do it like the kid is like randomly playing sharp at the concert or festival. Is that like technically kind of like a slide? You can raise it up, but it just sacrifices the tone quality by a lot. And then what Wylan mentioned, we can manipulate the pitch quite a bit. And we tune with our embouchures.
Anyway, Millie, did you have another question?
I was just wondering about the like spraying the reed. You probably shouldn't like wipe it, like use a wipe and like touch it.
No, I would not recommend doing that.
Rinse it off the bottom.
Or you can grab like a pipe cleaner and like just like put it through the bottom of it to get like the moisture from the inside. If there's like some stuff in there.
But also, again, like same thing with why you have to like soak the reed in a cup of water rather than just like in your mouth. Because like you are blowing into the inside of the reed, you do want to fully soak the reed because the inside is going to be where the germs are congregating.
Run for you guys a controversy lead as well. The big version.
Okay, I observed a class where the teachers started all their beginner bassoonists with a seat strap and a neck strap. Do you have thoughts on that? Like, would you ever do that with beginners? Like, is that still reinforcing the bad habits with the neck strap?
I mean, do you know anything about why?
She just said she was a little nervous with beginners, like dropping it, you know, because with the seat
I can
strap.
see that. If the neck strap is loose enough to where it's not creating tension, then I can see it as almost like a catcher if they drop it. So I can understand that, but I wouldn't say like pick which one's more comfortable for you, because you want to make sure everybody's kind of got the standards.
With a seat strap, if you stand up, it falls down. So
Yeah.
So like yeah, for little kids who like would forget that or something, I guess that would work. But I don't see any real like benefit to their technique or their posture or anything by doing that. I don't know.
Jabe said like if you play saxophone, it's like an easier transition to bassoon. Are there any other instruments that are like better suited for transition?
Clarinet, because you get kind of with oboe you have a lot of back pressure, so you lose a lot of air, so you have a lot of stale air. So I haven't played clarinet too much, but I know there's a little bit of stale air when you play.
It's weird because I know Dr. Pizarro puts it as with oboe, you'll never run out of air when you're playing, but you will run out of oxygen. Or basically because it's also, there's, I guess other than, like clarinet's like kind of the only one, other than that there's not really a good transition in terms of, at least in the other woodwinds. Just because like fingering wise, I guess all woodwinds are similar enough. You can transfer from anything, but embouchure and then like air back pressure wise, it's so different from every other woodwind that there's kind of no like good transitional instrument. Like, oh, if you have a kid that wants to learn oboe, have them start on this easier instrument and then transition. Like, just find an oboe teacher and start on oboe.
It's just because like the reed, like the opening in the reed is so small. So
I would never recommend oboe or bassoon as the first instrument, no matter what.
No.
Really?
But I think you started on clarinet.
Yeah, a lot of
Yeah,
the people.
I know you started, my
I
first
did
instrument was
sax
clarinet,
before,
you played saxophone,
Yeah, I
yeah.
thought a lot of people who play bassoon that I've met say they started on clarinet and sax.
A lot.
I'm one of them.
Single reeds.
I know a
is
lot
probably
of
the best.
us that started on flute. I think
Yeah.
it's like the thing of like really quiet and shy flutists, there's a pipeline that leads them to
Like, you
oboe.
are the type of-
Yeah.
And so not trumpet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I
Sorry, I'm asking a lot here. When we talk about like teacher, okay, like it's different at every school or every age level. Like, how often would that teacher, how should that teacher be going? Should we be asking them to bring the reads? Does it depend on like how many students, like every week? How the lesson? Also like,
I would say weekly minimum.
Are you asking about like a teacher, no, sorry, and the student wants to play oboe? And you would want them to have weekly lessons. And you would want them to verify, like you would have like a list of like good oboe teachers in the area and as well as bassoon. And you kind of recommend like, oh, these teachers. Because I know in this area there's some popular ones and they just do it all the time. And they're probably cheaper for the students as well. You kind of want it weekly and check up with that teacher, be like, is this student still studying with you? And if they stop, you kind of need to be like, you need to be with this teacher because they cannot be successful without it.
The other big thing with oboe, I don't know if it's the same with bassoon, but at least in my experience, reeds are so susceptible to change, like just through like, if you're like playing every single day, it's gonna change throughout the week. If the weather like suddenly changes, like your reed is gonna change, so having like literally, even if it's like, like weekly checkup, like I had somebody observe one of my oboe lessons for WinPet once, and then numbers are about like 15 minutes in, so we've only been adjusting reeds that whole time. She's like, yeah, lessons are normally about like 25 minutes of reed adjustments and then like 5 minutes of actual playing. So even if it's just for the reed alone, a weekly lesson is going to be like invaluable for the student. And then also obviously they're going to be working on playing and everything, and just having that like regular like check-in to make sure you're not slipping into bad habits is good for like every instrument.
I would say if they could see a private teacher once a week or at least once every other week.
Yeah.
and they should be paying for it? Like what if,
Well, I know my high school certainly couldn't afford to bring a bassoon teacher in just to teach me. I had to go and get my own lesson, and it's oftentimes not in the budget, so yeah. I paid for it myself.
A little bit from woodwind methods. When you're choosing a bassoon or oboe player, you kind of want to consider factors. Can they afford it? Are they responsible? Are they skilled enough? Do they have good fine motor skills? Are they these multiple things? Like you can't just be like, you're like, what's that with this stick? They're like, here you go. You have to be careful with who you choose to play these instruments. And probably like if you're like a new middle school teacher, you're probably gonna have like 2 oboes and one of them kind of works. So you can only pick like one at a time. So you have to consider if you think that you can afford it and communicate with the parents about it.
I just have a stupid question. Are there plastic double reeds?
Yes. The Legier reeds,
Yeah.
they make double reeds as well.
they're like one
I played it one time and I thought they sucked.
Incredibly
Same here.
overpriced.
But I really have no
recommend
opinion.
synthetic reed for adults.
I think the bassoon one was like $200.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
like 150. It's just,
I would never.
just buy a normal read. They play and feel a lot better. And
The only context I can condone the uses of synthetic reeds is in marching band. And if you get to somewhere and they're using a bassoon or a marching band, you need to end that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, get them off the field.
Yeah. Bassoons. For fun, one time I marched bassoon in a parade because it was a weird tradition that my high school had. Don't have your kids march it. It's weird to march. It really isn't heard, and yeah.
Speaking of which, bassoons and oboes, well, sometimes not, but a lot of times they're made of wood, and taking one outside in the cold or the hot, it can be damaging for the instrument. So, and we talk a lot about reed care, but actually caring for the actual instrument, yeah, if you, I can't think of what I'm trying to say, if you put it like, if you change the temperature on it too quickly, it can crack the wood, or it can melt the finish on it even, and just completely ruin the instrument. So honestly, I don't think my students see the sun ever.
Yeah.
Alright, we probably have time for like 1 or 2 more questions if they're good, so anything else? Alright, well, in that case, thank you all so much for coming. If you didn't check in, the link is on the board and also posted in our Discord. And we still have 1 more hour for our fundraiser at Urbane Cafe just across the street. So go ahead and support our chapter. If any of us stick around, and if you guys have thought of any more questions, double read players love to yap about reads, but we never get the chance to because no one else cares. So we'd love to answer any of your questions if we're still here. But we will see you all hopefully next week at our clinic.